There it is.
See the timer up there? So, okay, so we're going to do the best we can today with what we've got, and that's going to be us being the experts. Hopefully we'll have the rest of our crew here in a little bit to help us get some stuff working right. As we get started, I want to spend a few minutes and I want to talk about what's going on in Iran. And before we start to think that Dave's just dealing with the political situation or something like that, no. The situation in the Middle East has direct bearing on our study from the book of Revelation. That is the part of the world that most of the events in Revelation are focused on. And, we kind of have, as Americans, we kind of have a little bit of a very much a Western-centric. We think that what's going on in America and with America is kind of the center of what's happening in the world. And everybody thinks that. We all see the world from our own eyes. But for us in America, we have a hard time realizing that, all the biblical events are centered there in the Middle East. And Iran has been a player in Middle Eastern events and politics essentially throughout biblical history. And, by the way, Iran, that's ancient Persia. That was one of the nations that ruled over Israel at a point in time. So as we look at the events going on in the Middle East, and we'll talk about some application here in a few minutes, especially as it pertains to the book of Revelation, but there is absolutely a connection here that we need to be seeing and understanding. So first of all, tell me what all of you guys heard, because any of us are only going to be able to see so big of a perspective on what's going on in the situation in Iran right now. Maybe collectively we'll get a little bit wider angle of what's happening. So what's going on in Iran? What are you guys seeing?
We're working down the hierarchy of the Islamists.
Okay, so in Iran we have, when you say working down the hierarchy, elaborate.
They've already established a new Ayatollah in charge, so he's next on the list.
Let's see. Let me spell this right. Ayatollah with an H at the end?
Yeah, I don't know what his name is, but I think everyone that starts with Ayatollah should be top of the list. Should work down to just below.
And we're gonna talk vocabulary here in just a minute. So the Ayatollah Khomeini was the guy that was in charge in Iran. We'll talk about that again more in a minute here. But
His son too would have been the next in line.
So both of them have been killed by Israeli airstrikes, is my understanding. I'm not going to go into details because I don't know any of the details.
There's tomahawks and airstrikes.
Right, and the last I saw, Israel was going after the politicians, the people, and the United States was going after military installations. Say again? Missile production and so on. So we've got essentially the U.S. and Israel coordinating in this attack on Iran.
So, what's his background from Abraham and
the Ayatollah?
Huh?
The Ayatollah? Okay, good question. So the question is there a connection between the Ayatollah and Abraham? And we're going to deal with that here in just a minute. Great question. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And so let's just talk Iranian history here real quick. Anybody remember the history of Iran from back in the 60s and 70s?
They're very Western.
Iran was a very Western nation in the Middle East. So it was, if you go back, especially in the 1970s, Iran was considered probably the most progressive nation in the Middle East. Remember who was ruling?
The Shah
The Shah. So we had the
Kinda
SH.
cool.
What's that?
He was kind of cool.
He was kind of cool?
Yeah.
Okay. In the 1970s, Iran, very wealthy. They had oil production that was, one of the leading oil producers in the world. A lot of money going into Iran. How did the ladies dress in Iran in those days?
Western.
Very Western, and not just Western, but very fashionable.
Yes.
Fashion from Paris.
They weren't wearing the
No burqas, so fashion from Paris was going straight to Tehran. And so very Western, very progressive in the sense of there was a lot of disconnect between the Iranian people and especially the government, a disconnect between them and Islam. And that was offending the Islamic leaders. Now, key terms that we need to understand, and maybe you guys already know this, but in Islam, an imam is a teacher. It's very much akin to what a rabbi would be in Judaism, teaching about the religious truth. And we can look at a parallel here in America and say it's kind of like a pastor here, but it's different, okay? I don't get all up in y'all's lives, right? I mean, you might feel like some of my sermons are just stepping on toes, but that's not necessarily my goal, and I sure don't pay attention to exactly what's going on in everybody's life so that I can intervene and say, hey, you got to change this or you shouldn't be doing that. Where an imam might. Go ahead.
They're predominantly Shia also.
Okay, so we're coming up with so many awesome terms. So Shiite and Sunni are some key terms that we've got to define here too. So an imam has not only the right but the general practice of speaking into somebody's life. So, I heard that this is going on at your household. You need to get your household in order, or whatever. Not just a sermon on Sunday morning, but they have a lot of authority culturally. Go.
Like being able to spearhead community and social pressure.
Sure, a lot of that. A lot of ability for social pressure, but also to, maybe like, hey, I expect more giving out of you. You're fairly wealthy. You ought to be contributing at this kind of a level to this local project, or I expect you to be helping this family or whatever. I mean, the imams, though, had a lot of influence. And so what happened about 1979 is the religious leaders, the imams, were very offended by a lot of the things that were happening that the Shah was leading. They didn't like this disconnect between the government and the religion. They didn't like the way women were dressing. They didn't like the general westernization of their nation. And so they were able to rile up a lot of young people.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Many of the liberals, college liberals, were pro that following. And 30,000 of them ended up getting killed right after they took over.
Wow. Now that was a number I didn't know at all. So
they're religious. What did they, I don't know how to phrase this. Who did they, when they had a religious ceremony, who were they concentrating on? Was it an idol, a person?
no, they were very definitely Muslim.
Right.
They're part of Islam. And so these imams, who were the Muslim leaders, were essentially the head of this whole revolt that was happening. And this is going to feel strange to us, so try to wrap your heads around this strange idea. Okay, the Ayatollah was a religious leader who took a political office. Okay, and that is so foreign to the way we think. To try to unite religious leadership and political leadership in the same spot. The closest parallel I can come up with, I see you, babe. The closest parallel I can come up with is the Church of England. Okay, so in European history, the Pope was the concentration of religious power, and then the various kings had the concentration of political power. But nobody was able to put those two together until Henry VIII broke the Church of England away from the Catholic Church, and he tried to unite those two positions of power as the King of England. But he did it from the political perspective, trying to force leadership over the religious. The Ayatollahs were primarily religious and pulled the political power in. Go for it.
They're what you consider a theocracy.
Very good term. See, we're getting all these great terms up here today. So this became a theocracy. A theocracy is different from a